Sorry, I was muted. Okay, there I am. I was just checking myself there on Facebook because I had this like super terrifying thing of audio, right? Why not? That's a little hot. Oh well, too bright. Oh well. Hey Pamela. Oh, usually it's a Pepsi. The margarita's never. I'll say that. Oh, and you're ready for the show. So, well, we will. Try something. There we go. Oh, the lighting was driving me up the wall. So, hey Chris, how are you? Corey, my voice isn't clear. How are you? It's, hey Don, how are you? Oh, I'm coming across fine on my end. Everybody else hear me pretty well? I am wonderful, Don, for the most part, after a meltdown today, but that's okay. We're all allowed to have those. I decided my total human ADHD brain, there we are. I went to look for, I got a new camera, the Nikon Z30, has no viewfinder. It's like more of a social media vlogging camera that Nikon came out with. And I need a micro SD, or sorry, not micro SD, micro HDMI cable. So I went out and looked for one, and no one in town has one. Imagine that. Ordered the wrong one on Amazon, so I had to send that back. My brain was like, "Hey, you should mount your monitor to the wall." So I went looking for that. So I spent half my day after my eye. Oh well, is what it is. So we will get started here momentarily. Hopefully, everybody is having a great weekend so far. Not too bad. I am ready for Wednesday for the honor flight, and I am totally ready for vacation. Much needed. I know I just went on a trip, right? So, well, well. One final check of a few things here. We will get to hopping. I just kind of, oh, you kidding me. Let me check everything because I went wireless again. I'll be right back. Okay. Hopefully my sound issues are gone. I apologize. Hopefully, can you guys all hear me now? I went wireless again. Imagine that. So I would have technology. Oh, you said you could hear me fine, Chris? Okay, well, I'm just going to double check again. can't win some days. It just seems like every Saturday I can't. Oh, well, shoot. Oh, well, shoot. Oh, let me try to figure this out. Am I better or not? Not good. Okay, now is it better? Now can everybody hear me? Hey, Paul, how are you? Still not good. How are you? Garble, that is really weird because I'm coming clear through on my catalog technology. Keep talking. Okay, well, we will just get started and roll with this, and we're just sweet. Jesus. Okay, there we are. Oh, what a day! What a day! Hopefully, this will clear up here with me. I'm gonna check my. Hey, Evan, how are you? Oh, I'm connected to my fastest of internet. Okay, well, hopefully. Okay, well, tonight we're going to talk about making photographs versus taking. So, hopefully this will clear up here momentarily. We'll just keep going, I guess. Okay, that's just how my brain works. Okay, welcome back. Oh my. Okay, so tonight we're going to talk about making versus taking photographs, right? I think there is two ways of looking at this. Or when we want to do what we do, right? I think there's taking a photo and making a photo. Two completely different things. So as always, I'm going to start out with a quote. So you don't take a photograph, you make it, right? Just like Ansel Adams says. One thing I love about that is, right, you just don't take it. I think if you take a photo, you're just creating a snapshot. If you're making a photo, you are looking at something more. You're thinking about it more, so on and so forth. So I think there is a very, very, very big difference. It's like picture. If I take a picture, that's a capture. Action. Creating a photograph. I don't like the word picture. So, what is taking a photograph, right? Well, that little picture there, to me, is like the Wild West. There's you are not thinking about anything. You are not doing anything. You are just machine gunning away, blasting pictures left and right. You're sitting here picking up the camera and you're clicking over here. You're not focusing. That's it's like the Wild West, right? There's no rain, no nothing. Nothing is happening. You're just going at it, and that is not a horrible thing. Um, but it's one of those things that you just kind of you just do it, right? You're just capturing a moment. You're taking a photograph. You're not like sitting down thinking about it. It's like when I don't use the tripod. I don't use the tripod. I think, I do that all the time. I shoot. But on occasion, I need to sit back and, like I said in the past, when I'm editing a photo, and there's something I don't like about it, I think it through, I start building off that foundation, and then I get the photo out. It's the same thing while you're out photographing. You got to find out what I don't like, what do I like, what am I doing, and we got to put a thought process. So just out randomly taking a photo, creating a snapshot, or capturing a moment, to me, that's there's nothing special. You are just throwing frames onto the memory card over and over and over and doing. That's all it is. You're not really sitting back thinking shutter speed, aperture, ISO, things like that. What's compositionally better? How am I going to tell a story? Do I want to do some artistic expression to this photo? So on and so forth. Really, it's just you're out here just looking, taking pictures. So obviously, when you get through to like this photo, that is right. That's your typical. I picked up my phone. We were at Disney, and I'm like, click, right? I take a picture. There's no thought to that, right? Other than the only thought process I had was grab your phone, turn the camera on. There we are. Look like the old school Instagram. Click. I was documenting. That's all I'm doing, right? I don't even know why I took the photo. I don't know why I think I posted it on my Facebook page. My personal. So there's times I go back to like, what? And that's why I took the photo of that. Who knows? I have a whole phone of them. So yeah. So let's get rolling here. So what is making a photograph, right? These are noggin. We are taking this device, the black box of the camera, and we are looking at it and saying, okay, I've got, right now I have a 60 to 50 millimeter lens on the camera. How do I want to portray this? Wide, normal, however. I think that through, right? Then I'm thinking, well, I've got all these buttons up here. Manual, aperture priority, shutter priority, program. What do I do? Which one? And I go from there. And then I have the ISO button. Okay, I have my shutter speed, my aperture set, so on and so forth. And then there's things like autofocus, all that stuff, right? Because now we're creating a photograph. We're not just documenting something. We are really documenting the scene in front of us, but in an intentional, that's the key word, intentional way. When we make a photo or take a photo, that's very unintentional. We do it to document something. We don't do it to intentionally come up with a vision, take that vision and put it into the black box, and that silver button, right? So when we make a photograph, that is just more engaging. So why be a maker, right? So we're sitting here talking about taking photos and making, right? So why would we want to be the maker versus the taker? Now, are either of those bad things? Do we have time? Do I really care to sit at Disney and be the maker of an image of that food photo? No. Now, if Disney hired me and said, we need you to take food photos for a restaurant, then I'm a maker. I'm not a taker. But then I'm just out to do it with my wife. My wife doesn't want me to be a maker, right? We're there to spend time together. We're having drinks. We're having good food. That was our night out together at Disney. She don't want me to be an image maker. She wants me to be a taker. You know, how many times we go places that always have this stuff, and everybody's at a table at a restaurant at a birthday party, and they're all on their phones. Right? You don't want to do all that. So I don't want to be a maker in that situation. But why do we want to be the maker? There's a million things why we want to be a maker. But technical proficiency is one. The more we do a thought process and a few lives, people talk about the process of taking photos, or calling it the post process. How do we take everything to black box and put it up this place over here and edit? So when you're thinking through a process of taking a photo, right, you become, whether you think so or not, more technical, more proficient technique because it's muscle memory. I can pick up my Nikon Z250, put it up to my eye. I can pretty much tell you 99% of the time what button I have. getting used to that camera. Then we start to master skills. The more we go through, we put these things into the device, do all that good stuff. We become, we have skills, right? So we become, instead of that beginner, we become intermediate, eventually we become a master of that skill in a sense. I will even say a master doesn't know. Anybody who says they do is lying second track. Because why? I mean, I do not care to hang out with people. Oh, I know it. Oh, yeah. If you do, great. Um, but it's one of those things where I think you always can learn and grow. So why not? So if you're a taker, you're never going to learn. If you're a maker, you're going to start to learn. Then we start to really be able to create images with any camera, whether it's this camera, IC62, IC30, or if I go down into that bag out there in my cabinet, I can pull a Nikon FM2 film camera or that Vivitar N8000 that I have, and I can create images. One's digital, one's film, right? I can still create images because I have the technical proficiency, I have mastered skills. Now it's allowing me to create photos with any camera. Somebody could pick up Nikon, Canon, Sony, whatever camera brand out there, and literally make photos. Because all you got to do is just try to figure out what to hit with those things. And maybe a little trying to figure out some menus. But other than that, you can do that. Now, the biggest thing is when we become makers, we take all these and we start being able to create images from our vision, right? We can take what's up here, put it in that front. And that allows us to do that vision. What we want is so many people struggle with the whole, it's up here, I have this thing, and this is where it stops. You're like, I don't know what's here. Everyone knows that. You just have to slow down and think. If you're like, okay, I need to stop action and motion. I don't know what I do. So, well, if you think that, what does that and where here? Now, if you don't know this thing at all, because you're always buying the next new thing, or whatever, or you just are afraid of this stuff, electronic stuff, it's not going to kill you. It ain't going to hurt you. You're only going to break it if you drop it. Um, kind of things. So just figure things out, play with it, things like that. So that's all going to allow, all these things are allow you to become a maker of images versus a taker. Hopefully my audio is better. Again, I think we're all here, right? All six of us at the moment. We want to be makers. So the first one is intention, right? I said that a little bit ago, where we make nope, okay, that we make images with intention. Right? That is thought process. Let me try something. Right? Now is it better? I'm hoping so. Yes, hi, figured it out. You know why? It's a stupid system backed me out and was taking my audio from the Mac. So let's jump back real quick. Sorry. Let's start over. There we are. So sorry. Hopefully I'll hit these things really quickly. Now, I guess it's a learning curve, right? We're always learning. Actually, let's start up here. So if we're just I'm gonna hit some high top bullet points for you. I apologize. Now I'm gonna create a checklist of like things from now on. So when we get into this whole thing, right, taking versus making, think of taking as the Wild West. You're over here taking pictures and over here taking pictures and over there taking pictures. There's no thoughts. It's totally a lawless world. That's all you're doing is clickety-clacking all over the place. We're just hitting the silver button or black button, whatever color you got, and that's what it is. There's no thought process, no intention to any of this. In a nutshell. So again, this photo, right? I'm not a maker of this photo. I'm a taker. I just took a photo. I documented it. I didn't, try to spend all my night being a maker unless Disney called me and said, hey, dude, we need you to take pictures of this. Then guess what? Then I'm a maker, not a taker. Obviously, my wife doesn't want me to be the maker of food photos that evening. She wants me a taker because we are there having fun together. No child, as much as I love my child. It's good to get away, that kind of thing. It's when we were at Disney. Went out shopping. So what's making a photograph, right? So making is thoughtful, right? It's intentional. Now you hear my words of wisdom. Oh, Connie, you make me. I don't know what I want to say. I feel flattered. That's what I say. So when you're making a photograph, right? It's intentional. I have a thought process. I am taking once again, the black box, the silver box, whatever box of this color of your camera is, and I'm thinking things through. I have a lens, and I'm trying to figure out, do I want to show it this way or that way? Then I sit down and was like, do I want manual, aperture, shutter, priority, program, auto, what it may be, ISO. I'm thinking about it, right? It's totally intentional. We're not just click and we're done. You're more of a taker with this thing than a maker. But this, you can be a maker with this too. But I can also take this device and be a taker versus a maker. I can take a $1,000 camera and be a maker or a taker versus a maker. So come on. There we are. So why be a maker, right? I'll hit these again real quick. Obviously, technical proficiency, because I know all the buttons on my camera. I've learned them. I don't buy a new camera every time a new one comes out. Do I think about it? I sure do. Do I want the Nikon Z8? I sure do. Do I want to spend $4,000? Nope. Do I need it? No, I really don't. The Z6 II does quite well. Again, like about the D850, I only want it for layout. Imagine that. That's a lot of money just for a layout, right? So you become more technical proficient with your skills. And as you become more technical proficient, you start to master things. And when you master things, I'm not going to say that I hate the sense when people say, oh, I know everything. No, you don't. And if you do, I still don't think you don't. The masters still don't know everything, right? How many times have I been doing this? This is what? Almost a year lives and I still have issues, right? I'm still learning. I still have audio issues every once in a while. I figured it out. Now I'm going to start mastering these skills, hopefully. Right? Maybe in 10 years. But then you can start to create images with any camera. I can give you Nikon, a Sony. You just have to go in and decide, okay, where are these buttons that are on my Nikon or my Canon and whatever camera I have in my hands, right? I almost bought a Sony. My Z30 is going to be my new live camera, social media kind of stuff. So I'm done using my phone for the most part, unless I need to quickly. But this is different. This doesn't have a viewfinder, so I have to get used to that. But I almost bought a Sony because I liked a few things about it better. But did that outweigh this? Yeah, a little bit. But the reason I went with the 30 was because I can take all the lenses I have and it fits right onto here. So why get another camera, right? Where I need to get different lenses. Stupid and useless. But I can still create images with this once I become more technical proficient. Then I can start taking what's up here in the old noggin and throw it up into any of these devices, any of those film cameras I have out there, the Z30, the Z6 II. You could give me a Sony A7 or A9 and I can make images, right? Because I have all these skills that are built up, and then I can take what's all up here, make vision become reality. So that was a quick nutshell. So intention. This is the first. So I'm going to touch on several things that I think can help you become a maker, or things you can focus on to be a maker versus a taker. So let's look at intention, right? Anything that's intentional is good. We're thinking things through. we're trying to figure out what's the shutter speed, what's the aperture, what am I taking up here and putting it into there, right? So it's just one of those things. And when we're a taker, we're not intentional, really. We're not. We just, away we go. We take pictures, wild, wild west. Where when we have intention, you know, like my trip to South Dakota, this is a picture of a car in North Dakota. I'll show you pictures throughout tonight, and I'll kind of explain things with them. But, you know, I saw something. I had a vision. I pulled over. First thing I thought, what lens do I need? Do I want to cross the stupid highway, or can I shoot it from here? I'm going to grab the 70 to 200. I'm going to sit in the car and take it because I'm not going to run across the highway. Not that there was anybody coming literally for miles, but I was kind of still on my way somewhere. I don't want to say be late. I had nowhere to be, but you know, then I had to go through and think about, okay, how much sky do I want? Do I want more sky versus more foreground? Things like that. So when you're intentional, you start to think all these things through, and we start creating images. So there we are. The bus picture. I don't know if this is posted yet. I know it's posted on Instagram. I've seen this bus 3, 4, 5 times in my lifetime. It's on Highway 20 and out in Nebraska. And I've always wanted to take a photo. Always. So I knew when I went on my trip that this was going to be a stop, whether I was here 5 minutes or 5 hours. I was getting something that I liked. And I intentionally thought through this process, right? I knew that I love the clouds, right? So I knew I'm going to, you know, go in, even post-process. I knew I shot it in my mind as black and white. So I knew to underexpose it, right? I intentionally did that. Did I have to? No. I like to underexpose about a quarter of a stop or so. That's just how I do it. Then I had to think through, which ratio do I want? Do I want 1:1 or square? Do I want 16:9? Do I want the normal view? I did all three, right? I'm not going back here. This is what, almost 6 hours from my mom, so 10 hours from here. So I'm not going back there tomorrow, right? So I got to think intentionally about everything I want to do. Every vision I've ever had of this photograph in my head. I Googled the crap out of this thing, try to figure out where is it because I don't want to miss it. I told my mom, we got to find the bus on the stilts. You know, I knew when I went into post-process that I was going to use the masking in Lightroom to select the bus, brighten it up just a smidge, reverse the mask, and darken it up just a little bit, right? And then I knew I wanted to use a red filter in black and white post-process so it gets my blues black. So it's things like that, right? All these are intentional thoughts. I had like post-processing thoughts before as I was taking the photograph because this is just a vision, right? I took my vision and made it a reality. So intentional things are great. So like this one. This was one that, again, I knew I was going to shoot it in square, right? Then I intentionally placed those rocks in compositionally in not rule of thirds, odds, right? It's not even, it's rule of odds. So then I thought, okay, I'm looking at the edge of my frames, things like that, like how much sky do I want above that cloud? I'm thinking this through as I'm staring at the scene. All this is intentional, right? I'm not saying that everybody doesn't intentionally think through this on every photo, but you probably, in a sense, want to, right? Like every one of these photos I'm showing you tonight is from a specific trip, right? It's a specific trip for photography. That's what it was about versus if I was on a family vacation. But I'm really hard to turn the maker off in my head versus being the taker. But so all this, you know, is intentional too, where I thought, do I want to do high? Do I want to do low? Things like that. So it's just that thought process through every time, each and every time. Like this one. So this was a post-processing possibility here. So this was Ardmore, South Dakota. This is a Rambler, one of the many Ramblers that were literally at this place. This was one that I took a picture of the whole car, right? The whole back with the Rambler. I was like, okay. It was very boring. It really was. It was kind of like, and it had this ridiculous, icky old camper that just didn't fit the theme of this photograph. So I was like, skip it over. I looked at this 5 or 6 times and I thought, well, as if we go in and we vertically crop this and cut out a bunch of the car. And again, I'm trying to show you something differently, right? So I'm not looking at this car. Like I looked at the car in a very literal way, like, right? So maybe you're not a car person. I'm not. I wouldn't know a Rambler from a Chevy. So it's one of those things where I had an intentional thought of how much do I want to cut off of that car? And then there's stuff on the left, like how much of this do I need to shift? None of that was thought of post or pre-processing. It was all post-process. Then as I got into post-processing, I'm like, it was way too even. It wasn't dark and bright and things. So I went and didn't add a vignette, but there's a filter that I used in Color Efex Pro or Color Efex 4, Color Efex 4, that allows me to, I use the one filter called underexposed, or low key. Low key made it dark. Then I wanted to lighten up that car a little bit, right, to bring me right in. So what did I do? I went in and used the other filter and I popped it on there, and this is all digitally done, in there where I wait and said brighten center, or what is it, brighten like middle or whatever. But then I started controlling those. I can control how big that bright spot is. I can control how bright that spot is. And I started playing with these and starting to balance everything out. Then I added a little bit of contrast. I pulled it back into Lightroom and finished it off. So it's things like that. Not all this is going to be intentionally done at the time of capture. I wish I would have thought of this while I was photographing it, but hindsight 2020, right? Any questions so far? None? Nope. Okay. So, this one. This is one of my favorite ones. This is probably the very first favoritist, right, of the trip. North Dakota. So this was one of those where I saw a photograph going north to south, right? I was headed north into North Dakota towards Theodore Roosevelt National Park. And I loved it from the angle. And then there was a gravel road because I needed to get off the highway. They're like Iowa. They don't have shoulders for some ungodly reason. And I was like, whatever. So I pulled off and I thought, I wonder what happens if I go down the road. And then I saw this, right? Now, did I just take this? People say don't put it in the center. I think it's great in the center because that's me, right? I can do this my own way. So as I'm sitting here, I did put this center. I shot it square. I shot it in the 16:9. I shot it in square, moved the barn all the way to the left. I moved it all the way to the right. So I have about 30 or 40 photos of this barn. I don't know if Peggy's on tonight, but Peggy called this the butterfly barn. I kind of liked it. But this was one of those where, I'm thinking things through. I intentionally made it dark, right? I made it more gloomy, things like that. So what I originally had intentionally wanted to do was not where I ended up, and that's A-okay too. Moral of the story. So storytelling, right? I'm just a storyteller in general, but right? So when we're a maker, we become a storyteller, right? So whether that's going to be a story with one photo, 2 photos, 3 photos, 12 photos, right? We have the ability to tell a story. This was a very candid moment at the wedding. That's her daughter. They were getting ready, and she's like, "We kind of want a picture of us." Just looking out the window together. I'm like, "Yeah, cool. Let's go over here. We'll use this. Blah blah blah." Get over there, and then this is a true moment. This is not set up. I'm like, not tickler. No, this was a true 100% moment. Would I have gotten this if I was not technically proficient? I don't believe so. I was at the point where I had the camera I was just adjusting exposure for light, trying to figure some stuff out. And then this started to happen. And this was inherently underexposed. And I'm like, well, crap. But I'm proficient enough that I know how far I can push the camera in post-process. I didn't matter. I fired off 5, 6, 7 shots. Yes, they were dark. But I knew that how far I could push my D850, the latitude with dynamic range, I could save it. If I would have had to think about that, right? And like, well, I don't know. Is it going to be too dark? I would have missed it, right? So when you become more proficient and you're
very technical about it, guess what? You can start creating these off-the-cuff moments really quickly because this stuff happens. I don't know how many times I've been somewhere when I did some photojournalist work, things like that things just really happen. And last week, if you were on, we had all the other photographers, Trent and Dennis, and then Kent. Like, look at Kent's work. Kent's a photojournalist, right? All his photos, that's his main thing, is to tell a story. I thought about seeing if Kent wanted to come back on the show just as his own. So if you'd be interested, let me know. I'm going to try to bring on a few more guests. That worked out really, really well. So now we have the first photo, right? We got another one. It's telling the whole story, right? Again, this was one where they wanted something set up, and that's not what happened. I got where I wanted to be. I was actually talking to the groom's mom, I believe, or aunt or somebody. Don't much matter at this point. And sometimes I feel like I come off rude at a wedding. Oh, that's awesome, Corey. Good. Perfect. I'm pretty sure he'd love to come back on. That I kind of come off rude because people are talking to me and I'm not paying attention, but I'm listening because I'm watching. I'm scanning the room for moments, right? And so on and so forth. Or I'm trying to anticipate something happening. I guess that's one of my positive perks of ADHD, I guess, is I can literally do about 16 things at once sometimes. I can listen to people talk in one conversation. I can have a conversation over here, and then I can turn and answer these guys. So I'm having my conversation with her, and then I'm looking at her down here, and I see a moment and click. So, like, again, I can be telling these stories with 1, 2, or, come on, 3, right? I didn't probably put these in the proper order, but that's not the point. But again, I love these moments. Like, I would shoot weddings. I do 50, 60 weddings a year if I could shoot them all in a journalistic way where I don't have to do any setup photos, where I'm just allowed to photograph things naturally. There are people who do that. I don't know of anybody here locally that does it, but that's not how everybody wants their weddings. They all want the posed and the pretty and the stuff that I don't care to do. I would prefer that people remember their day in a way that's true. Like, if the bride spills pop all over her dress, you know what? It happened, right? It's a part of the day. Like, like not being perfect, right? I wish everybody that was in weddings would understand things don't need to be perfect. These are the way I would prefer to shoot a wedding. So then you get into this whole storytelling thing, right? Like this one. This is kind of been a couple, this would have been during COVID, first start of COVID, 2020. I always do Emma's pictures every year in August for her birthday, and it gets harder and harder every year because she wants nothing to do with it. But this was a moment. I was talking to my friend Brenda. She let us come out to her farm, and the horse is having some fun with Emma, and she's like, okay, right, it's a moment. I was talking to Brenda. My wife was there. Click. I can be photographing and changing things and listening and talking. It's just becoming to be able to do that 10 things at once. But again, I'm telling a little bit of story just with one photo. Or I can tell this story of a baker, right? You would think, right? Because we're baking. Choosing it to do black and white. I love hands. Hands, doors, and windows. Those are my 3 favorite things. So here I can tell a story in a group. This is a great photo in a group. I have a picture of Holly in one, and I have her hands here, and then I have something else, and I did a collage for a social media post for them, or kind of thing to share, and it was all 3 images. But you can tell the story with just one, right? So the first 3 photos, we had a wedding, right? Obviously, we know what it is. Here we know it's a baker. God knows what you could think of with a photo of Emma. Is she the farm girl? So on and so forth, right? You're telling a story whether it's true or fictional, I guess. Mindfulness. So what do we mean by mindfulness? Well, with mindfulness, it's really, really thinking about it. So I'm kaputzing down the highway through South Dakota towards, I think it was after Provo. Yeah, it was between Provo, South Dakota, and Hot Springs. It don't really much freaking matter. But saw this building, had a total different vision in my head. I went back and got a different lens, came back, got a different lens, went back, switched out lenses. And then I came back, and again, right, I said I love three things, windows, doors, and hands. And this one I was very mindful. I knew I wanted it to be square. I knew I had to add so much of the roof in. But the most mindful thing I needed to be was look at the windows. So I have a window on the other side and a window here. I have the cross section and then the top part, north to south, and they're all perfectly lined up. That was literally with the camera in my hand, literally like this with the viewfinder, slowly going down until I got them lined up just perfect, click the shutter. I took 5 or 6 that way. Again, I have some where I was just slightly off, and I'm like, I'll crop it in, make it more even. I'm like, something doesn't seem right to me. No, the window panes dividers, whatever you want to call them, they were just so slightly overlapped. It just didn't look right. So this is probably one of my other more favorite photographs from the trip. This one. This is way different. Everybody's seen this one probably. This was a very mindful shot in the sense of this was the very last photo I took of the trip. What stopped me was the house on the north side, and I was looking at it. So I went up through town, ignored the house, drove through what little of a town there is, came back, and the buzzard was sitting on the peak in a profile position, and I loved it. And then I'm like, So I started being very mindful of how close is the eave of that roof to the corner of my frame. How many shots can I get off before said bird decides to skit and skedaddle? And I'm trying to figure out how much. So I have to be very mindful of a lot of things. But this was one of those photos that just kind of like spoke to me. This was I think I have 15 edits of this in the end, because it was very hard to edit, because I wanted more of the sky. And as I brought more of the sky out, then I started getting haloing off the bird. And then I had haloing around the eaves, and it was a hot mess. And I tried a whole bunch of voodoo on it and finally got it. And then it came down to, do I want it warm? Do I want it cool? And I thought, I want this to be creepy as all out gets, because that's not my normal thing. I just felt like it. But in the whole process of this, said bird decides to take off. And I was like, that's not what I want, bird. And then I'm like, just take a picture anyway. Bam. I got 2 shots. This one, he's perfect. The next one, it's just a hunk of mess. So, being mindful of things too, and thinking like that kind of stuff, even after the fact. But then I had so much stuff where I wanted to get, tilt, and then I got to think in distortion and all that good stuff. So this one is actually kind of a challenge, and I like a challenge. And I haven't been challenged. I haven't been very challenged post-processing lately. It all seems to come pretty easy, but this one made me pretty annoyed. Didn't even notice the bird until you pointed it out. But, it's one of those things, and I will tell you, just for shits and giggles, I actually went into Photoshop and I removed the bird just to see what would it look like. It was boring. The bird is like the cherry on top of everything. So another photo of being mindful in the sense of everything's kind of laid out, but I was very mindful in this of light. That's what drew my attention. That was my attention getter, the light coming in. This is at Living History Farms last August, where the light was coming through. Very cloudy day, beautiful light kind of day, very soft, overcast. And I had that window in the back kind of coming this way, lighting it up, but I had side light. And it was just beautiful. So it was one of those where I didn't feel rushed. It was like a very zen moment, which is not my normal mindset. And this was one of those where I looked at it and I knew what I kind of wanted to do, but it was so calm. It was no one there because it was raining. So it was me, myself, and I, and a sooty, dirty floor, and the guy who was just making photographs, or I was making photographs of him. He didn't even talk to me. It was great. He was just in his world of being a maker of these cast iron like hooks he was making, and I was being a maker of my images. And yet we had a connection, right? We had a connection together, but a non-verbal connection. And after that, we started talking to each other. But it's just being very mindful of just like everything's out of the world. It's all kind of like closed off, and it's just me and the hammer. More, I wouldn't say it's more of a hammer, but so lighting. This is another thing when we're making things, right? As a taker, we're not worrying about lighting. We're not worried about intention. We're not worried about, everything else, artistic expression, things like that. But it comes down to lighting, right? Sometimes that's what makes or breaks it. We've all seen this photo a million times, right? But again, Matt, my brother-in-law, tattoo guy, right? If I made this light and airy and pretty, it would have been okay, right? But he's just like, how do you want me to pose? Don't pose. Just what do you feel comfortable with? That's him, right? It's a very moment to moment, me behind the camera. He's right there in front. And it's just, these were their headshots. It was probably it was fun. I loved these because they were not the whole turn here, pose here, turn here. Okay, there you are. Oop, yep. And everything's perfect. These were like, I wouldn't even want to call them a headshot. These were like personality shots because that's what I was pretty much capturing in everybody's shots. Or like this one, I've got composition where I have the path starts at your feet. Like this is like a POV shot, right? You're like here and the trail takes you in. This is the Badlands. We think of Badlands and it's like icky and hot and deserty kind of, right? If you've ever been there. And then that ominous sky, it was kind of spit and rain. Most people were leaving. I was just showing up. Why? Because you can make good photos in crappy weather. But this was one of those where lighting was, you got very dramatic skies, would have been great if I would have had the God beams coming out, but I can't have everything, right? I will take what I can get. No questions so far? Okay. No comments? No fun, right? I'm going to quiz you guys, so get ready. So where is the lighting coming from here? Where's the light coming from? And bonus point for what kind of light it might be. No one's going to take a shot at this? There's 10 of you out there. 10 of you probably know the answer. Don't be shy. Nothing? Okay. Well, it's coming from the right because you have, if you look at your shadows, yeah, top right. There we are. Now they're all coming up. And we're always a hair behind, so I am from you guys. So yes, top right. Oh, Megan, I was asking where the light was coming from. So this was a photo that I did a couple of years ago, probably more than a couple of years ago now, with Camera Corner down in Davenport. I helped them do a workshop thing, kind of lead people around with them. They needed a last minute person. And this was a day where it was like 95-ish plus degrees and it was icky, humid. It was outside Geneseo at a farm show, working farm show. There's a difference. And these guys had packed up the horses and they were leaving for the day. I was hot. I was tired. I wanted to go sit in the car in the air conditioner. But this photo presented itself. And again, it was a very mindful photo in a sense because I had to shoot it just right, not get too much, get too little, cut certain things off. It's all about light. But again, you can have light, right? Sometimes, well, I shouldn't say sometimes. Light should make the photo, but not always. Or this one. This is my favorite of favorites from Glacier last June. We were in this like rainforesty kind of forest-ish kind of, I don't know, environment. And it was wet and drippy and damp. But it was cloudy, but there's breaks coming through the clouds, right? And I got lucky to be right in front of this tree when just little spots were being lit up with little just beams of light. Again, how I edit it, how I post-process it, whatever you want to call it, this is more, it was darker around the edge, but I obviously went and used some artistic vision and made it what I wanted it to be. But again, it's light. This would be a very boring shot if it wasn't for the light, in my opinion. Or like this one. Probably never seen this one before, unless you went way back on my Facebook page. But this is one there's a body painting workshop in Cedar Rapids I took. I don't know, it's been several years now. Something different, right? If you're not uncomfortable, you're not learning. So I don't do portraits at this point. I really didn't do portraits much, but it was something very different. Got me out of my shell a little bit with the whole portrait thing. It was kind of fun to have a different type of subject other than fence post. Or this one with the light. It's backlit. It's coming towards me. I have those nice, beautiful shadows coming through the bottom. Again, it's just about light. So, personal connection. Well, what the hell do I mean by that? Well, you can have a personal connection that's lasted for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, however old you are, with your subject in a sense. It doesn't have to be a person. It can be a person, but also could be a location. It could be a place. Personal connections can be something very short that you just made a connection with somebody in a very short time, or it can be something that takes years in the making, really. So, again, I'll skip through some of these fairly fast, but these are pictures from the Badlands. I have a very personal connection with the Badlands. It's probably the first vacation I remember going on as a kid. It was with my grandparents. It was their light blue Buick with like these blue velvety seats. We drove up there all the way to South Dakota in a Buick Century. I even know what car it was. That was my first car. I got it. What else? Oh, I remember driving up there and the snacks. We had the little cheese in a can with Ritz crackers. What else? Oh, there's something else. Oh, and everything was in a brown paper bag, right? Like that was, I just turned 36 on the 7th. That was a long time ago. And I can remember all those details because I connected with that moment. For some reason, my brain don't let me forget that moment. So I have a very personal connection with South Dakota because it's a lot of maybe what I enjoyed as a kid, my grandparents, going with them places. And that's maybe why. I don't know. I'm very infatuated with that. The movie theater. I've driven past this a million times in my life. It's a half hour from my house where I grew up at, right? I have that personal connection. And I think sometimes when you have a personal connection with the subject, you take better photos. Usually you're more inspired. You have a feeling. Like if I'm tasked with taking a picture of this said coffee mug for a person that has hired me to do this, a potter, that's the word I was looking for. I have no personal connection with this. It's a mug, right? That's all it is to me. Now, to that artist, they have a lot of personal connections because they created it. Tom says, do you use live view to adjust settings with your landscape photography? Well, with Mirrorless now I do because it's pretty much all live in the viewfinder. When I had the D850 or the DSLRs that didn't do that, my D850 would do it on the live view on the back on the LCD screen. I did not, unless it was on a tripod. I just went with instinct. What I felt was right, what I thought was right, not it was always right kind of thing. But, now I do. I don't know, if I make a incorrect decision, make it too bright or too dark, I see it before I click the shutter and I can correct it, which is super cool. But like the movie theater, like I was talking about the mug, right? The maker, the potter, has a personal connection with this. They created this with their hands. I have no personal connection with this other than I bought this thing for 25 or 30 bucks at an art gallery. I like the color. I like the shape. It's great. That's the only connection I have with it. If I was asked to photograph this, I would make a very mediocre photograph of this because I don't have a feeling towards it. I don't. It's a product shot. It's nothing. But this is something I remember as a kid. Another memory. This was the very first movie that I can remember seeing. Was at the Rialto with, guess who, my grandparents on a Friday or probably a Friday or Saturday night when I'd go over and stay with them. And it was Homeward Bound, the movie with the dog and the cats and they get lost and they run through the forest. Yeah, that one. See, again, I remember all this dumb stuff because I have a connection with it. It's a personal connection with my subject. So I've always wanted to photograph this in some way. It just took me 36 years to find it. Finally, better late than never. You know, like I said, you can have connections with things or locations, but you can have connections with people. So this is my grandmother. Um, my wife calls this my shrine photo because I actually have this hanging above our. This was taken on film on Ilford 400 speed on my Nikon FM2, 50 millimeter 1.8 lens. It's ridiculous. I remember all that. But I have this hanging right next to our kitchen table, really big. It's like 24 by 36 in a frame. Again, it's my grandma. This reminds me of my grandma. That's how she is. She does chores. I just talked to her today while shopping at Wally World. And this is probably one of my first portraits that I took that I really liked. This was one of 3 shots. That's all I took, 3. She hated her photo being taken. She still hates this photo, and that's fine. I will cherish this till the day I die because this is just, it's very genuine. If you know my grandma, it really puts her in here. But here's the backstory behind it. So I actually, and I remember all these details, which is ridiculous again. I stood on a 5-gallon bucket to get high, 50 millimeter. Thank you, Corey. It's a classic. That is, if I remember right, my grandpa's shirt. This was after my grandpa passed away. That is his hat that she wore out, I think I remember. And again, this gives me a connection, obviously, to my grandma, but it gives me a connection to my grandpa who was no longer there at the time, right? So you can have these connections with people. We always think of a personal connection with people, not places, not things, or moments. But, I should have put the one of Dixie in here, the lady I met at a grocery store in Delta, Iowa. She owned it. That was a quick connection. We talked a little bit, and I was the only person I probably ever asked, complete stranger in the world, if I could take their photograph. So, you can have a short connection or a long-term connection. So composition, right? Ooh, that last one was a lot more in-depth and fun than composition. But again, composition is one of those things as a maker you're going to do, right? Composition can be lots of things. The road, leading lines into the horizon. How much foreground do I want to add? How much sky do I want to add? Do I want to add any blue above the clouds, or do I just want to cut the cloud off at the edge of the frame with little spots of blue? Whatever it may be, right? This road is not dead center like the trail taking me right in, but I come from the right and I zigzag through. This is all the things we think of, things we can do. Here's another Rambler picture from my trip. I don't know if I posted this one yet. But this was one of those compositional, yes, it's center, but it's very fill the frame, right? I'm like right here, right? This is very wide of me. You can see more, but you start to hone right in my face, and right, not that everybody wants to see that, but it's filling the frame. It's cutting out junk. This place was so overwhelming. There's crap galore. There was literally a car facing north and south here. This is going east to west. There's 15 bajillion cars over here. Had a very small window to work with. I wanted to do it 16 by 9. So I had this nice long image, but I can't because I get all the other crap in there. Now, I thought about adding a little bit of the back end of this car, but this car wasn't a back end. It was a front end. And then I feel like it would throw off the balance. So I wanted back end, and car. But I can't. So I figured out what to do. I cropped in, I filled the frame. Again, leading lines taking you through into the photo and wherever you want to go. Again, leading lines, a trail, right? But now the trail's not in the middle. It's off to the right. This is a wide angle lens, 17 to 35, 2.8 to f4 Tamron. And I shot it very wide angle, tilted the camera down, allowing me to have a lot more of this big, very wide open prairie expanse, and I put very little sky in there. One reason was I didn't like the sky. There wasn't as dramatic as that previous sky. But again, I kind of feel like you're coming into the scene and then you're going up kind of thing. So again, composition is going to help you when you think of things like this to be making photos versus just taking it. Could I just have clicked this? Yes. I guarantee you, if I would have just been a taker versus a maker, I would have walked up, whatever lens I had on, probably wouldn't even zoomed it out, click, would have had equal amount of foreground to sky, would have been boring. So the last one as we kind of get into here is artistic expression, right? So we can have all these rules, right, and all these technical things, but within the technical proficiency, we can become artistic, right? So I can do the ICM stuff. I can make the intentional camera movement stuff. I can take something very boring and make it more interesting with the ICM. This one no one's seen yet, right? It's a buffalo. Right? I mean, I don't know. This is very artistic in my mind in a sense that, right? I had one lady, I don't know who it was, I showed this to, and they're like, what is it? It's a buffalo, right? I made you think. That's the best thing about photography. I made you think. But again, I viewed this buffalo in a different way. I didn't put its head in there. I just put buffalo butt. Right? That's what it is, right? And for me, it wasn't as much about the buffalo as the texture. Look at all the texture. It's like a transition from winter to spring. He's got all his really rough fur and things are kindly falling off, and the backside of him is like, well, it's all gone. But I also took, where you wouldn't know here, an artistic ability of the background. The background was very bright. So in Color Effects Pro, I added a graduated neutral density and knocked the brightness down. But it was I didn't like the balance of color within this image. It was very flat and kind of, I don't know, not bluish, but it was correct color balance, but it just didn't seem right. So I can change the color of my neutral density in that software. I picked the coffee one. It's called coffee. It's brownish, right? So look, now I'm playing off, it's kind of all brown, right? It's the coffee graduated neutral density against the buffalo. So this is just creative expression. I even have this one in square. I have it square where I think it's just this hump on his back and that's all it is. I didn't like it. But hey, you can be artistic, right? We don't have to do that. Here's the same building again, right? This is a very dramatic edit. Very dark skies. I love the clouds. That's why I also stopped at this location at the moment. And by the time I was done, those clouds dissipated there, right in the thin air. No fun. But this was one where I went way underexposed in Lightroom. I kicked it into Color Effects Pro 4 or Color Effects. Color Effects 4. I don't know why I call it Pro 4. It don't much matter. But then I use the filter to brighten up the center. Something just different, right? It's artistically. Is this representational? By God, no, it is not. It's very artistic compared to the original. So this one I think I posted on Thursday. This one I took a little bit of artistic ability, right? Expression. So just use a neutral density on the top in Color Effects again. Thank you, Don. Made it dark, used a little bit more contrast. I upped the blues a little bit to make it a little bit more dramatic and fun, right? It doesn't have to be literally. It's actually a very boring storm. Well, I wouldn't say boring. It was very stormy, but lots of lightning, things like that. But at this point, I used more clarity, things like that in the sky to bring the definition out. There's one in Color Effects 4 called Detail Extractor. It makes things look like crap really fast. So I always make it look like crap really quickly, and then I back it off, and it pulls out more detail. Great for skies. Again, ICM, right? Very boring. Sun coming through the trees, a little bit of fall color, and a stream. Very boring shot. Went vertical, and then at an angle movement. We're almost done here. Again, we've seen this one. Tulip, macro, abstract. Again, do I have to photograph the flower in the most representational way? Hell no, I don't. Make people think. So, as we wrap up here, this is my last slide before we get into a few other things. But I want you to pose this question to yourself this evening. One, am I a maker? Or two, am I a taker? So if you answer this question as I'm a taker, or sorry, a maker, I want you to then think of the next question as you ponder and do whatever. How can I become better? So how can you become a better maker? Is it slowing down even more? Is it taking one of these things we spoke about tonight and said, I want to apply more artistic expression to my work, or I want to work on my composition more, or things like that. Now, you've answered the question, I'm a taker, right? So you're not methodically thinking things through. You're just kind of like Rambo machine gunning it, right? So the question then I pose to you is you need to think, what can I do to change that? And I'm going to say, don't do 90 things at once. It's like when I lost my weight. It's one of those things. I can't count my calories. I can't walk 10,000 steps a day. I can't drink a gallon of water. I can't go to the gym 3 days a week. I had to take one of those each step. All that took 2 years, one at a time. And again, I put all those together and did them all the time. I don't do them all the time anymore. But again, don't overwhelm yourself with this whole what can I do to change? Think of it, what can I do? And then put it to practice. Like, don't just think about it and write it down. Write it down and do it. Whether it's that one time a day you're going to say, I'm going to pick up the camera. I'm going to go out and become a maker for one image. If you need to go machine gun blast everything, go for it. But one of those photos, I want you to sit down and think about it and say, okay, I need to be a maker of one image. What image is it going to be and how do I do it? So that is where I leave you this evening with 2 questions to ponder if you are a maker or a taker. But hopefully everybody got a little bit of something out of here this evening. And I apologize for the audio issues. I will not got it figured out on that end. So as we go here, come on, computer. Reminder, if you have not seen this, you may have, but some people may have not. Coffee and Clicks. We are moving to a new location. Yay. Oh, you're welcome, Mary. We're going to go to Scooter's Coffee. It's on the southwest side of town. So it's on Edgewood, 2300 Edgewood Road. And I'm switching the weekend. It's not the second. It's going to be the 3rd. The only reason I changed that, you are welcome, Don. The only reason I changed that was because Scooter's was so freaking very nice to allow me to book their room for the rest of the year if I did the 3rd weekend, because they have another group who meets for a few more months on the 2nd Saturday from the same time, the 9 to 11. And I didn't want to say, okay, we're going to meet for these 3 months at this, and then we're going to meet the next 2 months for this, and then we'll be here and we'll go back to normal. This is an awesome room. I've used it for Lynn Area Photo Club board meetings when I was president for a few times. We can close the damn door. There's no barking dogs, unless you like the dogs. I love dogs, but it's hard to hear each other. And I was taking everybody's feedback. So I had a lot of feedback saying, I love it, but I wish I could hear other people across the table. I wish I could have a group conversation here and then hop in. So as always, I listen to you guys. So 3rd Saturday of the month from now on, for at least the rest of the year, and it's going to be at Scooter's. It is on the far southwest side of town, so some people it's closer now, some people it's farther away. I couldn't find somewhere it was more centrally located. I dug and dug before I even talked about Coffee and Clicks last year. So again, new location, new weekend. I think everybody's going to enjoy it a lot more. And it's Scooter's Coffee. Not that Stillwater's coffee is bad. That's pretty good stuff, but I enjoy Scooter's. So stay tuned. So what are we going to stay tuned for, right? So we just talked tonight about making versus taking photographs. I will be on vacation next 2 weeks. I'll be coming back the day of the 3rd. So I didn't want to try to get back with my kid to do a live. So 6/10, we are going to do the pitfalls holding you back as a photographer. These are just totally random thoughts. Mary's, what is it close to? Can't place it. So it's over by, I want to say University of Iowa Credit Union, but it's not. It's Green State now. It's over by the old Lindale Mall. Oh, awesome, Connie. Great topic. Looking forward to Coffee and Clicks. Scooters, me too. So pitfalls holding you back as a photographer. These are just things I think, yeah, Sugar Fire Barbecue. Corey is right. Westdale Mall. Yep, thank you guys. So holding you back, these are just things I think of, and maybe things we don't think of, things we need to focus on. These are even things like, when I say like not learning your camera, things like that. Then on the 17th, we are going to talk about finding a photographic workflow. I have kind of talked about this on the live before, but I want to talk about it again. And then the next one will be creating a, let me see, is that the one? Oh no, looking at subjects in a different light. So I'm going to teach you, in a sense, how to take this boring old thing and make it more interesting. Or the same barn you always photograph over and over and over and over and over, and you're like, oh, poke my eyes out with a sharp stick, please. But you still go back there for a reason, right? You have some connection with it. So I'm going to just throw some pointers, some tips out there for that. Then the July 1st, we are going to create a post-process workflow. So trying to come up with some type of flow from the time we enter the photo into the computer, from the device, all the way to exporting, and things we can do in between. And then the very last one, well, I want to say last, but July 8th, until I come up with some other ones, is elements of the photograph. I am going to touch a little bit on the PPA, or the Professional Photographers of America stuff. That's like what they talk about and what they do to merit photos and all that. And I think they're 12 elements, I think. They're all very strong. And I'll just talk about things of adding things in, taking things out. Again, kind of coming back to this whole making versus taking things in a sense. This is more of a thoughtful process of adding and just adding and subtracting elements in a photo. So that is all. Oh, do I have one more? I do have one more. So thank you, as always. I didn't mention at the beginning because we had frickin' audio issues, but you can scan the QR code to support the show if you wish. Greatly appreciated. That's all I have to say about that. If you choose to, you are welcome, Megan. Thank you, Mary. Or you are welcome, Mary. Jiminy Christmases. I get flustered when I have issues at the beginning, and it lasts forever. But no, thank you guys for always. If you have any ideas for the 8th or past the 8th, oh, hey, Patty. Oh, thank you. Great pictures. You are welcome. So it was good seeing you at Coffee and Clicks. Hopefully we'll see you again. And the same with you, Corey. It was good to see you and everybody else who was there. So yeah. So again, as always, thank you. If you got questions, you know where to find me. But so I'm going to wrap it up because it's so weird that when I started this evening, it was still daytime out. So awesome. Well, you guys have all a great weekend. Like I said, thank you, thank you, thank you. You know where to find me. You know where to do all that good stuff. Be on the lookout. I'll be at Mesa Verde National Park and what's the other one? Great Sand Dunes National Park. So I'll always be posting this stuff. And if you're personal friends with me on Facebook, even maybe you'll get to see some photos of my mom again. And you all know what that means. Am I going to do any fireworks before the 4th? I'm not much of a fireworksy person. I could. Oh, yes. Thank you. Hopefully I will have a great trip. Yep. So my wife is staying behind on. It's going to be my mom, her husband, and Emma and myself. So dad and daughter trip. So again, well, I will stop blabbering. Everybody have a good time. I'll be posting things on the road, all that stuff. So you never know. I may or may not pop on live for shits and giggles. I don't know, while I'm there. Who knows? So we will go from there. So you guys all have a wonderful evening.